Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a special holiday-themed episode of Uncertified. If you're a first-time listener because you really love this movie, a quick sales pitch for you. Every week at Certified Forgotten, we release a new episode. We either do a 60-minute standard episode with an incredible guest, or a 30-minute episode where it's just me, my friend Matt Donato, talking about a relatively new release, something on theme, something tied to the holidays. And that, my friends, is Certified Forgotten. I'm Matt Monagle. I am one half of your Matt hosts. I am joined by Matt Donato, snug as a bug in a rug in his special to-be Snuggie, which I'm not going to lie, buddy, I'm a little jealous about it.
Britt Sandler's ears are burning because this is a Pluto Snuggie, number
Sorry,
one.
Pluto Snuggie. My apologies, deep apologies to Britt Sandler.
Britt was very delightful and invited us to a special Pluto event. I'm going to privilege brag for a second living in Los Angeles. I go to a lot of these events and get a lot of swag sent to my house. And there are a few things I use as much as this Pluto Snuggie. And the First Omen kind of sent this like over blanket as well that is also a hoodie blanket. And if you are a PR person listening to this for some reason, more comfortable things if you're sending to critics, please. More comfortable things. We don't need all the paper stuff that we throw away immediately. I want Snuggies.
Yeah, and you, of course, grew up in New Jersey, but have lived in LA for years now. So it is probably a frigid 65 degrees outside, and you were completely broken. Is that correct?
Yeah, my blood has thinned to the point where I am now a true LAer where it gets to like 60 or like high 50s and it's North Face weather. It's no longer like I used to go running in shorts still when I was living in New York City and it was like 30 and pushing that kind of boundary. But it's true. You move out here and it just goes away. But I'll trade that for the beautiful weather otherwise.
Well, since I am checking in for this week's episode from the sunny state of Florida, and you are checking in as always from Los Angeles, I'm really glad that you picked a Christmas movie because it feels, for all the years I've lived in Texas, I've never quite gotten used to a non-white Christmas. And so the idea of, you were talking about snagging a Christmas movie. You had one from the last year that you really liked that you wanted to talk about on Uncertified. And it is a true wintry, snowy, frigid Christmas movie. And it feels good. It feels good to even just see it on screen, even if we don't get to experience that in real life. So this week's episode is The Sacrifice Game. It's from friends of the podcast, Jen Wexler and Sean Redlitz. And if you haven't seen it before, it's available for streaming on Shudder, as well as available for rental on a couple of other places. If you're not a Shudder subscriber, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but if you're not, quick plot synopsis for you. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all the students of Blackville Academy are headed home for a holiday break. That is, all the students but Sam and Clara, whose families leave them to weather the holidays with a single teacher as their guardian. But this is no remake of The Holdovers, for soon Blackville is visited by a bloody group of cultists who have murdered their way across the state in preparation for a satanic ritual. Co-written by Wexler and Redlitz and directed by Jen Wexler, The Sacrifice Game is a home invasion film made for the holidays. Matt Donato, you are the undisputed king of Christmas horror, and I feel like this is one of your upper echelon ones. I feel like this is kind of inner circle Christmas horror for you.
Yeah, this one worked for me quite a good deal. And it's newer too. There has been not as many, let's say, Christmas horror classics, in my opinion, over the last few years. We do have Terrifier 3 coming out, obviously entering the game very strong. We have some other films as well. But the Sacrifice Game I saw in July in Montreal. So talk about seeing Christmas horror and watching it, but again in a beautiful area that is nowhere near Christmassy in weather, let's say. And I was really taken aback with let me say this first and just this is not a backhanded compliment. This is a straight compliment. I was just so impressed by the way that Jen Wexler like elevated her filmmaker game. I think this is such a step up from The Ranger. And again, I mean that lovingly because like
Yeah.
it is it is a tremendous step up when you look at technique, when you look at visuals, when you're looking at everything. This is such a leap, I think, and it is directed with absolute confidence from behind the camera. Like I like proud is the word, like that's very dumb to say it like that, but like I am very impressed by the way that Jen just like steps in and crushes the Sacrifice Game. But then to just look at it as a movie, this is my Black Coat's daughter. This is my girls over Christmas break stuck together and having to deal with a horror scenario because We get more of a Manson family vibe. We get more of this like roving gang of murderers who come knocking on the door on Christmas. It's a very, rap, rap, rap kind of thing. Hey, we're here and it's the holidays. Be nice to us, right? Invite us in, cook us dinner. And I like that kind of setup. But the way this film pushes forward and deals with its horror elements, I mean, we're going to talk spoilers very soon. I'm being vague, so you can turn off now if you haven't
Yeah.
seen it yet and you want to go watch it, because I am going to spoil some things very soon. But I was sold by that. I'm really taken aback with how this film goes hard into its concept, what it's selling, its inclusion of music, how it deals with all these things. I think this is a very good little movie.
Yeah. I'll be honest out of the gate. I don't think I was ever going to like this as much as you. This just isn't, necessarily a mode of horror. It is sort of at its roots a home invasion film. And it plays with that concept in some ways that I think is really interesting. But I've never been a huge home invasion guy, and this probably isn't the one to completely upset that for me. But I do think you're absolutely right. I mean, this is technically, and again, I hope it doesn't come across as a backhanded compliment. I think this is technically as a piece that is using such like a big central location that is so steeped in its period 70s setting. Technically, it's just such an impressive accomplishment from Wexler and does such a really good job of creating this very lived in 70s world, right? Like we joke about this sort of being, the holdovers, not the holdovers, but it is adhering and attempting to recreate a particular memory, a postcard of Christmas through the facility, through the costuming, through the music, and I think it does that really, really well. And it also, I think, is a fun and interesting example of how many different variations of Christmas horror there is, right? Because I don't need to tell you, you know better than me. There are slashers, there are home invasion films, there are monster movies, there are, really fun creature features like Krampus and things like that are all kind of playing with the feelings and the emotions that bubble up around Christmas time, kind of doing the double handed thing of like, look at us, we're having fun on Christmas, but also like, Christmas is a time for sadness. And this is, I did not shake the thought of the Black Coat's Daughter the entire time that I was watching it, because it does sort of play in that same idea of there is something just immediately uniquely sad of not going home on Christmas. I think we've actually talked about this in previous episodes, right? But like when you're of a certain age, especially when you're younger, we both had, I definitely had times, I think you've mentioned that you had in the past as well. There were periods where I did not go home for the holidays during college because it was expensive, because I couldn't afford to, and I was a broke college student. And you sort of make your own fun. It's fine, but it's such a like emotional shorthand for being like, I'm in a place I'm not supposed to be in at a time I'm not supposed to be in. And I think the Sacrifice Game does a really good job of running with what that sentiment means to the characters. And it pulls out some really impressive performances too from some actors that we know really well and some that we don't.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, we have to talk about Mina Masood. Aladdin to the Sacrifice Game is a interesting pipeline, but when we're talking about psychopaths and we're talking about the kind of character who is going to be the well, he calls himself the leader of the killers, but like it's more of a wannabe leader. He takes charge, and there is so much charisma in him playing deranged and just bloody for fun. I think that is so fun to see actors do the exact opposite of what you think they're going to do next in their career. And I mean, listen, there's a whole list of articles and interviews where the poor guy was kind of unfortunately left behind after Aladdin, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty to talk about there, but then to return in a movie like this, return in quotation marks, but to choose the Sacrifice Game, and then you go down the line too, like Olivia Scott Welch. I really like Chloe Levine. She's been in the Fessenden verse and around that Glass Eye world for a long time,
Hmm.
and every time I see her in something, I know I'm gonna have a not low floor for it immediately, because I think like she's just so impressive the way she works with genre elements.
And also, another example of one of those talents that's moving both behind and in front of the camera. She's premiered stuff with our friends at the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival as well. So it's you talk about the Fessenden verse. It's always fun to see those. I'll use the coaching tree example here because I still think it's a goddamn good example. But it's fun to see the way that ethos of filmmaking pops up again and again over the next generation and the generation after that. It's cool to see.
I'm not gonna say the best performances, but I think the most impactful performances that we get to in the Sacrifice Game are its child actors, because to me, one of my rules or one of the things I say is, like, movies that focus heavily on children actors are made or broken by those performances, and again, age is absolutely a thing, but you see some of these kids come in here with such maturity and, like, such professionalism, and I think when you look at the Sacrifice Game, and it is heavily based on 2 girls, Madison Baines and Georgia Agin, like, they're really good, and that is so integral to how this movie works, especially little, Georgia as, Clara. It's spoilers, sorry, we're getting there now. Like, her playing the demon version of herself, this little kid just running around an all-girls school with it empty, and the way that she is able to turn the tide on the killers, like, that is one of those when you talk about, like, a Bustillo and Mowry film, or you talk about these films that, like Villains, with Skarsgård and Michael Monroe that I love deeply, but you set up a concept that you think you know what's happening, and you completely turn the page, and you do the thing that you don't think the audience expects. Once again, that works half the time. Sometimes it's super telegraphed, sometimes it's really hokey, it doesn't really go that well. I think the Sacrifice Game turning little Clara against the killers and the way they react and the way they start infighting and how that all breaks down, there's just so much to mine in not only the performances, but what is happening on a, like, demonic religious school level as well.
Yeah.
What's being hidden there, what is, what the demon is saying, and how she's turning these mad killers against one another. And it's all coming from this little girl who is just hitting way above her weight class. I again points out the wazoo for that one. Like, that just got a whole star alone for all of that stuff on the back end.
Yeah, and if we're in on spoilers now, I think one of the things that the film does with its characters that I genuinely really like, and I think is one of the smartest things any sort of slasher or pseudo slasher can do, is it completely upsets who you think is safe, right? Because out of the gate, it's setting up a few different character dynamics. You mentioned Chloe Levine, who plays Rose, who's sort of like the sweet, you think final girl esque school teacher who's tasked with looking after the two kids that are staying behind and is willing to give her life in order to protect them. You've got her boyfriend Jimmy, who works in the kitchen and buys her an engagement ring, and you think that this is going to be sort of the story. And by the halfway point of the movie, spoiler alerts, they're both dead, and they've died in violent ways. And there's a really cool shot at the end where their corpses are sort of literally brought to the table for a nice little dinner ceremony. But I think that it's one of those things where you can earn the benefit of the doubt with an audience in a lot of different ways. And some of that is by having performances that are coming from unexpected places. But part of that too is just sort of demonstrating a willingness to fuck with the expectations of your characters and who's going to live. Once you establish and I have criteria for when and how I think characters can die, and what I think it should be impactful. A lot of movies we talked about, people have heard me say it feels like life was not given a lot of weight, or it's something that I find frustrating. I think this film does a really good job of killing people suddenly, killing people appropriately, and making it mean something to the characters that survived. So it does the thing that I really like when movies do, is it kills people in ways you don't see expecting, at points you don't see expecting, but it isn't some just sort of like slasher stuff on the screen. It really fucking matters to the two girls that are still left, that every adult figure that they thought that they could trust in their lives, is now gone. And in particular, the character of Samantha Madison Barnes, it's integral to her decision to come back at the end. That black veil girls need to stick together. So that was a lot of fun for me. It was sort of going in and thinking, okay, let me kind of figure out the sequencing of the characters and who's going to matter, and then having all of that be inverted for me. I really kind of was like, all right, I'm going to give myself over to this, and we're going to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's an inversion of tropes as well. It's the inversion of children should always be protected in horror movies by the adults, like you just pointed out. But in this one kid goes on the offensive, and very brutally, and that is
Yeah.
very fun to watch. But it's also the inversion of, like, who lives and dies and how that happens, and like you said again, Gus Kentworthy. Hey, 1 million follower dude on Instagram and he's dead what in the first, how many minutes. We've seen that in plenty of indie horror movies where the stunt casting kind of goes off the rails very quickly. But in thinking about that finale again, and in thinking that everything Clara does, the trope inversion that I like the most is how characters keep coming back to do the right thing, but it just fucks somebody else's plans up. Like, I love the idea of Samantha coming back being like, "Black Veil girls stay together. Absolutely. I'm gonna go help my little buddy. We're gonna get out of here alive." And she walks in and there's just dead bodies everywhere. And Clara's like so pissed off. And she's just like, "I was in the middle of something. What the hell?" Like, it's such a
Yeah.
funny little note. And that happens a few times where characters think that they are going to, all right, so going back to Mina's character Jude. So Jude, the psychopath, literally thinks he is the demon. When his team of killers is able to pull off the entire mission objective, where you want to call it, that they're doing, they're collecting patches of skin so they can summon a demon. Blah blah blah. We've heard it all before. Turns out that all they do is unlock a demon, and they unlock a demon in Black Veil. He doesn't know that. He still thinks a demon was summoned or something, or that it's in somebody else, not a little girl. And I just love him coming back after he thinks he has the epiphany of, "I'm the demon. I matter. It's me. I'm the bad guy. This is great." And he walks up and everyone's like, "Shut up. You're not the demon. We know who
Yeah.
it is, you idiot." Like, those moments and how you can have fun with a horror film that knows the tropes it's playing into and knows exactly how to break them down. I think that's both to Jen and Sean as writers, co-writing the script together. They're two people who know horror so well. We've seen that because they've been in the industry for how long, like we interact with them. So you have two people who love the genre and have devoured it and have taken in everything they've learned. Like, that is how you get good satire. That is how you get good pushback on the norms. And I think that is one of the shining examples of the Sacrifice Game. It is made by people who fucking love horror, and you can tell that. It is one of the easiest things to glean from this movie.
I do have to point out that only you, Matthew, whatever Donato, would say the sentence where it's like, yeah, people are taking patches of skins to summon a demon. We, yada yada yada. We've seen that before.
You've
That is a
seen it
very
before.
that is a very Matt Donato corner of the horror budget movie bin for you to be like, yeah, this is a pretty played out trope, but let's see where it goes this time.
I mean, like, the Black Christmas remake literally makes gingerbread cookies out of skin. Like, I've seen skin patches in Christmas horror movies. Come on, what do you mean? I'm
All right, all
Donato.
right,
I'm
fair.
Donato.
But I do want to take a moment though and let you expand on that a little bit too, because I think that this opens with a sort of pseudo oneer, which literally goes into the home invasion territory. So they open with a home invasion scene and then immediately take a step back and throw you a little bit more into a coming of age film before the two halves of the movie meet in the middle. But I was really struck by how, I mean, you know me, I'm afraid of knives. How good the knife work is in this movie, right? Like, it's a very visceral. There's a lot of stabbing, there's a lot of slicing, there's a lot of cutting, and I think it does a really good job of reminding you that you don't need to do a lot with a knife to be fucking terrifying, right? Like, you don't need to stab a million times. Really, it's for a lot of these characters, it's one stab or one slice or one cut that kind of like is the thing that gets the blood going. Uh, but it's creepy. They do a really good job of like making like make knives great again kind of shit. Like it was hard for me to watch at times because I'm sensitive to knives in movies, but that's an ultimate compliment to the fact that you don't need to do a bunch of like flashy, you know, Hellraiser type body mutilation. You just need to like stab someone in the throat and then not cut away from them for like a good 15 seconds. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's awful. So I want to give you a space to talk a little bit about how much you like the kills in this, because I feel like this is also a really good kill movie as somebody who just wrote their 2024 list.
Yeah, number one, that oneer is so great because it tunes us into exactly what to expect. It feels very aligned with the type of exploitation films that helped shaped Quentin Tarantino and like eventually his films. And you have the score behind you that's got a good zip to it. You have the characters sauntering up to this house and doing it all cool like. And yeah, then murder just happens immediately and somebody's painting a window with blood. That opening is so crucial to what eventually comes after. because there is that midpoint where it is about two girls trying to figure out who these scary people are in their giant dormitory kind of area and the school. So there's a lull in that. And then we get to the dinner scene at the end, which again, Clara has taken control. All the killers are placed around a dinner table. We do get there's a good amount of gore actually now that I say that. I was almost going to say like quick gore, but no, there's a good amount of death here.
Yeah.
And to your credit again, it's pulled off very well. Fingers are chopped off, knives are slit open, knives are plunged into people. None of it looks fake, none of it looks computerized, whatever you want to say. Like again, I've seen too many movies that don't even know how to hide the blade well enough that it's completely digital.
Oh yeah, you put your hand down on a kitchen table and all your fingers are chopped off. We've seen it before. Yada yada yada.
I mean, I've seen that a ton of times in
Yeah,
horror
I know, I
movies.
know.
But no, to speak specifically to like how it pulls off the violence is very effective because once again, what you've said is correct. You don't have to go over the top. One of my favorite kills in like all of the Scream movies is poor little Dylan, and he's pinned up against a door, and the ghost face at the time just has a knife and is trying to stab him in the face. And it is the easiest kill ever because it's just the slow stab of the knife going into him and him dying. And that is so much more effective to me than like seeing guts and all that stuff. Like, cool, don't get me wrong. Give me practical all day and like blow it out of the water. But there's nothing scarier than a death that could happen. And I like any death could happen. I know that might not be the right way to say it, but in this moment right now, I'm describing it as like the death that you could see happening to you and
Yeah.
the exasperation of just like almost understanding what that person is going through. And that's a lot of these deaths. It's a lot of people pleading, being like, we were on your team. What do you mean? We tried to like, we let you out. Holy shit. Why are you trying to kill us? There's a lot of good fun moral dialogue in there too, because you have people
Yeah, there is.
bantering with the devil saying, why are you trying to kill us? We're here for you stuff. And the devil's still not having no sympathy, to quote a band. But yeah,
No, you're spot on with that. And I think that I'm glad you brought up kind of like the moral conversation too, because I think that it's an interesting the our little wannabe Mansons are sort of interestingly positioned too, right? I think that my favorite performance in the film probably actually comes from Olivia Scott Welch as Maisie, because they're a group of folks that are sort of early on, they are getting the Rob Zombie treatment. Maisie is sort of presented a little bit like a Sherry Moon zombie, could be like a Sherry Moon zombie, but it's actually, they're kind of there is a matter of factness to it that is revealed in time. Maisie went to this school, she found a book, she followed this stuff. They're clinging to the notion of what the process that they've done is true because these skin patches they were able to find. And it's a fun little moral gray area to play in, which is sort of like, well, if you're killing people not because you're into it, but because you think that you're going to get something out of it. And then the demon turns the table and starts to kill you. You're sort of like, well, who are we? Who exactly are we rooting for here? And that
are
allows
we
you,
the bad guys?
yeah, who's the like? It's like, oh yeah, demon kill those serial killer. Wait, serial killers kill the demon? I don't really know where I sit. I guess Sam, you're probably the best character in there until you aren't too. So it is a fun way of sort of having there be no clear moral high ground in a movie like this, which is an interesting thing to do and kind of a necessary thing to do, because when you open with a banger of a killer like that, you're like, well, fuck all of these people forever. And then three-fourths of the way through the movie, you're like, I guess maybe I want them to kill the demon. I don't know.
I mean, you're right. I was gonna say like I do want them to kill the demon at one point, but at the other time, then when the demon starts talking, and where this movie ends is also brilliant because at the end of the day, this is a girl gang movie in a way. When it all comes full circle, when we're all said and done, and we have the two little girls, you know, this. I mean, basically, Savannah's pleading with the devil at this point, and like pleading with the devil to have a spot of humanity, and at the same time, like it's a happy ending. I don't know. There's so much happening in
Yeah.
that ending that I fucking love because it brings me back to a movie like Livid that we talked about with Jen that is trying so many different ideas. And is Livid a little zanier? Absolutely. This is
Hmm.
just dealing with Is it zanier than a movie that's dealing with demonic possession and Manson-like killers? Yes, it is. I mean, that's obviously a credit to the Sacrifice Game still going for it. But the comparison of I'm just trying to like stick with is Livid evolves as the movie goes. It evolves into something. It takes risks and it goes throughout that. And I really love how the Sacrifice Game tries the same thing. And the way that it evolves, I think, is like really thoughtful and really meticulous. And watching it a second time, knowing where it was going, because again, I saw this prior, I saw it at the premiere and I reviewed it there, blah, blah, blah. Seeing it the second time really opened my eyes to like how well the plotting gets to where it's going. Like so much care
Yeah.
is taken into what the characters are saying, how they're interacting with each other. Like seeing the breakdown between the killers happen so much earlier than I did the first time. Not saying it's hidden amazingly well. Like they want you to know there's an eventual breakup of the gang, but seeing it again this time and like seeing how the gazes become a little uncaring earlier and seeing how these people, out themselves. I love that. I love that idea. And especially how they kind of reveal their plan earlier on and their some of the demonic stuff. Clara, especially, I loved seeing the way that Georgia is playing Clara, knowing she's going to be the demon.
Yeah.
There are the little mannerisms that I'm like, oh man, they were right in front of my face, and I still didn't like pick up on them quick enough in the first time.
And there is a shot in this because I always, if I walk away from a movie remembering one shot, that's an ultimate compliment for the film because I feel like I remember something. The way that they shoot Maisie's death at the end of the movie, where it's, we've seen a character fall down and then pool blood. I mean, Hitchcock did that with Rope or whatever with the dress scene. That's not a new visual concept. What they do with this, which is really interesting, is the snow angel thing, where like Maisie bleeds out into the snow and the blood as it pools around her sort of forms these like demonic angelic spiderweb wings. It's a really cool little visual idea. It's the kind of thing where I'm like, fuck, why hasn't somebody done this exact kind of thing in movies before? Shout out Jen Wexler for making it happen. So yeah, like ultimately I think where I sit with the Sacrifice Game is, it may not be the movie that turns me into the new Matt Donato when it comes to Christmas horror and Christmas slashers in particular, but I think this is going to be, and I will walk back all of the snide commentary I made about like being played out with all these tropes. I think this is going to be Christmas comfort to a lot of people. I think this is going to be a movie that a lot of folks would consider putting on year after year. For somebody, this is going to be their Die Hard, and I love that. I think that's the reason for the season, right?
Yeah, the Blu-ray just came out too, so you can own it physically if you would like to go purchase it. But I it's antique in the right ways, it's edgy in the right ways, it's entertaining as hell in the right ways. So for me, the Sacrifice Game kind of hits on everything that I want in that Christmas horror feel. And while the kills themselves might not be with candy canes and all black Christmassy, I still think that there is just too much technical wonder here to be like, yeah, no, this is just a good movie. And I ain't got qualms with that.
I assume you would be totally in for a Sacrifice Game 2, where it's just the two characters on a road trip doing demon stuff.
I would love that shit. Like legitimately, I
Mhm.
would love that shit.
Yeah. All right. There we go. This is slowly shaping up to be the Wexler Rob Zombie esque Fireflies franchise. So more of that, please. We definitely want to see it. All right, Donato. Well, it is the holidays. I think that means your year is quickly coming to a close. But for those that want to know where to find your best kills of 2024, which is dropping very, very soon, or just see what you've got queued up for the new year, where do people go on social media to follow you?
You can follow me at Donatobomb, DONATOBOMB, on Blue Sky, Letterboxd, and Instagram.
Ooh.
Hit the TikTok. I'm playing around with that a little bit until it either dies or it doesn't die. If it doesn't die, I'll stick around and I'll actually try to use it more. If it does, it was nice knowing you for a year, maybe. But if you do want to read my best kills, you will have to be subscribed to Fangoria because that is just in the magazine. So you gotta be in the know for that one. But why are you not subscribed to Fangoria already?
You should subscribe to Fangoria because Certified Forgotten is technically in this issue of Fangoria, which makes me smile for reasons we don't need to get into on the podcast. Um, as for myself, you can follow me at Monagle at Blue Sky. You can also make sure that you follow certifiedforgotten.com, our website. We are in the final stages of our brand new website migration. We've been talking about it for a minute. Just reached out to subscribers, let them know how the changeover is going to be. And then, oh man, you guys, we have so much stuff planned for the new year. The guest list for the podcast, the giveaways for the new subscribers, the articles that we're going to publish. It is I don't feel like I am overselling it to say that this is the most excited I've ever been to be running Certified Forgotten with you with all the stuff that's coming up around the corner. So hopefully you guys dive in face first in January and see exactly what the fuck we're talking about.
Yeah, I know it's hokey to say that I think next year is going to be the best yet for Certified Forgotten, but we just booked two guests for early in the year that are by and large our biggest guests ever. So I really am going to say 2025 is going to be a big year for us. So keep an eye out.
What is the is it a Kink song? Is it a B? What is the this will be our year? Took a long time to come. There we go. There we go. We got it. All right. Well, for those of you that are listening to this before the holidays, happy holidays, everyone. Go put on some comfort horror, and we'll see you in 2025, maybe, or a little bit before. We'll find out.